Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our studies of the five single chapter books of the Bible. Today we are in the book of 3rd John. And once again, this is not a very lengthy book at all. It's only a couple handfuls of verses. But there are several things in this letter that John writes to Gaius that are of value and are of importance to us. And remember, this is John the Apostle. He is going to be, as far as we know, the longest living of the apostles, and these are likely written toward the end of his life. As he writes to Gaius, there are going to be several things that he discusses, but they're going to center around one particular theme of faithfulness. And so I want us to look at a couple of different lessons today dealing with this particular idea. The first is found in the faithfulness of Gaius himself, because you find in verses 5 through 7 that Gaius is one who is extremely generous. He says, "Beloved, you do faithfully whatever you do for the brethren and for strangers who have borne witness of your love before the church. If you send them forward on their journey in a manner worthy of God, you will do well, because they went forth for his name's sake, taking nothing from the Gentiles." And so, he is described as one who does faithfully whatever he does for the brethren and for strangers. He is one who is very active. And the idea of brethren and strangers here is Christians and non Christians. He is not one of these individuals who will treat his brethren very well, but then won't give the time of day to somebody who is not a Christian. Instead, he treats both with great service and with great humility. He is one whose reputation has been brought forward over and over again as one who loves other people. Gaius is a very generous individual, and he is going to be commended for that by John. And certainly it leaves us an illustration of the type of individuals that God desires us to be. He says, when you send others out, if you send them in a manner worthy of God, if you send them in a manner worthy of the way that you're living your life, you will do well. We need to be those who can have it said of us that our love for God and our love for our fellow man is readily evident by the things that we do, by the way in which we live our lives, by the way in which we interact with others. It should never be questioned whether or not we care. And it should never be able to be questioned whether or not we love God and are going to keep his commandments, but also whether or not we're going to utilize that love that we have for God in the right sense of helping others and assisting others and being there for others. And that's what Gaius does. And so we see here Gaius's generosity and the way that that motivates others, but also the way that that is a commendable attribute in one's service to God. The second thing I want us to notice is the opposite side of the coin of faithfulness and service, because we have the example that is given of Diotrephes. And when you begin reading in verse 9 and through verse 10, you have this man who wants to be in charge. He wants to be in control. John says Diotrephes is one who loves to have the preeminence. He wants to be the one that everybody looks to. He wants to be the one to make the decisions. As a matter of fact, he is going to go so far as to be the decider in his mind of who is going to be allowed to come in and who isn't. He says at the end of verse 10 that he himself does not receive the brethren and forbids those who wish to, putting them out of the church. In other words, he is trying to turn it into an arena where he is the one in control. Unfortunately, in so many religious groups and in so many congregations, there is this Diotrephes that is there. And this one individual is the one who is going to be in charge, and he is going to have the final say on everything, whether by force or because the rest of the people will not stand up to him, or whatever the case might be. That's not the way God designed it to be. God designed God's people to work together. They were to be led by elders, and they were to be those who worked cohesively, not as a bunch of lemmings underneath a single dictator. And yet, that's what Diotrephes wants to be. He wants to be the one in charge, and it's going to be his way or the highway. That is an extremely toxic environment, and it destroys the church. And so Diotrephes is an example of faithlessness, because Diotrephes' faith is not in God. Diotrephes' faith is in himself and in his own power. And unfortunately, there are many people that fit that bill, even today. But the third thing that I want us to notice from 3 John is found in verse 11, where there John says, "Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God." We have to be those who desire to imitate what is good. Now, we're going to imitate either what is good or what is evil. It's going to be one of the two. So which is it? Paul would talk about in Romans chapter 12 that we are not to be overcome with evil, but to overcome evil with good. We also know that we are not to be ones who render evil for evil, but that we instead do good in return. Here, John is once again going to illustrate the importance of making sure that we imitate what is good in our lives. He's talked about Gaius's example, and he wants others to imitate him, not Diotrephes. But we need to be those who are going to look for and find what is good. And not just what is good according to what the world likes to see or what the world likes to point out, but what does God say is good? What does God say is the right choice, the good choice, the moral choice? And that's what we're going to imitate. These are some of the things that I found in the book of 3 John. I hope that they are beneficial to you. Obviously, as with all of our lessons, we don't have time to go into full depth on everything, but hopefully we've given you some things to think about from this chapter. Next time, we will come back and we will begin looking at the book of Jude. I hope that you'll join us then. But until then, have a great day.